Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by Greta. Greta's a great spot for all games, but may we suggest you come through for the game on October 19th specifically. More on that later, but that's the day of our watch party. Go buy your tickets at nationgear.ca. Greta is the spot to be, whether the game is home or away, whether you're at the game or you want to watch the game from Greta, just 10 minutes from the arena. Come by before and after, or whatever event you're downtown for with weekly drink specials. Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Game day edition of Canucks Conversation. My name is Igor Gilly. Joining me is Harmon Dial. Our technical producer is Jacob Lazar. Canucks versus Flyers tonight. Kevin Lankinen gets the start and goal for the Canucks. I've been talking about this forever. I wrote about it today over at CanucksArmy.com as well. No real surprise. No surprise to me that it's Kevin Lankinen. Again, I don't look at this as an indictment on Shelovs. I don't look at it as any sort of punishment or anything like that. It's not, they don't trust Shelovs. It's literally, this is the guy that they brought in that has more NHL experience, has a better resume, like a better career resume. He's more experienced. You were always going to go to Kevin Lankinen in this game. Like I said, barring a shutout or some otherworldly performance in the home opener, which Shelov should have gotten because of how well he played in the playoffs, this was always going to be a Lankinen start in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually curious to get your thoughts as well, because I haven't had a chance to watch Lankinen a ton outside of his preseason games, at least particularly closely. Like when he'd play for Nashville, it's not like I was scouting Kevin Lankinen. What do you see as the pros and cons of his game? Like with Artur Shelovs, for example, it's so clear that one of his biggest strengths is his athleticism and his explosiveness down low. He's able to make really acrobatic saves, and his weakness happens to be some of those point shots from distance, tracking those. With Lankinen, what have you noticed about his game? What he does well, what he maybe doesn't do as well?
You're going to like to hear this. Finds pucks through traffic pretty damn well. He's really good at tracking the puck. So, Lankinen, you're going to get that. You're still going to get a ton of explosive power, especially on those down low plays. He is really powerful in his legs, so he's going to be moving around. He's going to look really similar to Shelovs, quite frankly, as I think what people are going to notice tonight. He's just a really solid NHL goaltender, Harm. Like he's going to get the job done. Again, I know I'm higher on him than most people, but in my mind, this is a guy that undoubtedly was a top 5 backup for the past 2 seasons, and probably would have been getting starts if he were anywhere else. Like he started a lot in Chicago, but his numbers don't look great because he was in Chicago. With that context, they look pretty good, but I'm really excited for what I'm going to see from Kevin Lankinen, not only tonight, but this season. Like this is a guy that is a really good NHL goaltender. And again, this isn't a knock on Shelovs. He's 23 years old, but when Demko comes back, it's going to be a Demko Lankinen split. I would assume, like if Demko was back tomorrow, that's what I would assume, is that it's a Demko Lankinen split. But maybe I'm overhyping him. I believe in Artur Shelovs, all that sort of stuff. I know I always got to say that every time. But I'm really excited to see Kevin Lankinen tonight.
Yeah, I'm also intrigued to see how he'll look from a puck handling perspective, because that's an area where in preseason, couple of shaky moments, and that's something that I've heard about him is he's a weak puck handler. Like that's one of the parts of his game that isn't a strength, and especially when you combine it with him having to become accustomed to new teammates, new defensemen, getting used to those reads. He didn't have the longest. I'll take that. He got enough preseason action. I was gonna say he didn't have the longest preseason, but I think he got enough action. But I think that'll be interesting, is making sure him and the defenseman are on the right page for those dump-ins to make sure that there aren't any blunders. But outside of that, like you said, he's a really solid goaltender.
Speaking of puck handling, Vincent Desharnais is already a healthy scratch for the Canucks. He is going to sit tonight as Noah Juleson draws into the lineup. Pius Suter comes in for Nils Zaman. Harm, we have to talk about Vincent Desharnais. What's your read on this situation? Because I think my opinion might be a little different than yours, but like, what's your read on this situation?
Yeah, well, for me, Juleson's going to be a quicker option on that third pair. Like he's just significantly faster than Desharnais. We know that Juleson isn't a natural puck mover by any stretch of the imagination. But sometimes the problem with defensemen is on retrievals and breakouts, you can't be slow and limited with the puck. And the Canucks had two of those guys in the same pair in Forbort and Desharnais. Because think about it, there are some defensemen around the NHL who are slow, but they're poised under pressure and they can make a good pass. and they're at least competent at making simple plays to engineer defensive zone exits. Like think about Ian Cole last year. Ian Cole, we saw many times last year, his foot speed is not very good at all, but he has a certain level of composure with the puck when he has a forechecker on him that he doesn't panic under pressure. And there were moments where both Forbort and Desharnais, it wasn't just that they were pressured and would throw the puck away. Like I remember, because for an article today, I went back and sort of watched all their shifts back. There were some breakouts where Forbort had the puck behind the net, for example. He had Jake DeBrusk as an outlet option on the defensive half wall. Forbort was zero pressure on him, kind of like panicked and fired at glass and out, when instead he had DeBrusk right there, right? So it's not just that Forbort and Desharnais as a pair are slow. It's that at least in game one of the regular season, they also didn't have a composure and were missing the mark on tape-to-tape passes. And with Juleson coming in, it's not that I trust his ability to pass and make smart decisions with the puck, because he can be hit or miss in that department. But he's at least going to be quicker. And sometimes on defensive zone retrievals, if he's able to get his feet moving, he can just wheel it around the net, and hopefully that can help. Even though we don't look at Juleson as a natural puck mover.
It's funny that we're having this conversation about Noah Juleson, but another thing that helps Juleson in this scenario as well, Harm, familiarity, right? Like there's going to be speed bumps when you have as much roster turnover as the Canucks had over the offseason. You made some really good points about the Forbort Desharnais pairing. One thought I had today, Harm, is how long is it going to be until we see Myers and Desharnais swap? Desharnais goes to the second pairing with Carson Soucy, and Tyler Myers goes down with Forbort. Do you think that makes anything better? Does it make things worse? You'd have to start giving some more matchups to the Hughes-Hronek pairing. But do you think that helps to balance out the pairings a little bit? Does that make things worse?
I mean, there's a lot that would have to change, right? Because the Soucy pair typically gets the tough matchups, right? If Connor McDavid's in town, Soucy gets those matchups. He got them for most of the regular season, got the hard matchups in the playoffs. If Vincent Desharnais is now on that pair, I'm not trusting Vincent Desharnais against the other team's top line. Like if he had drawn in against Philadelphia, for example, I don't want Vincent Desharnais trying to defend Matvei Michkov and Travis Konechny on the same line. And that means, okay, now the Hughes pair has to take on tough matchups, which they're capable of doing. But does that take anything off the table away in terms of what they can produce offensively? So I don't maybe it's worth a try, because then at least in Soucy and Myers, you have a halfway decent skating defenseman on the ice on both bottom four pairs. But I still don't have, put it this way, a Soucy Desharnais second pair, as much as I like Carson Soucy, would be a below average second pair in the NHL.
That's a good way to put it. Okay. Looking back a little bit at last game and what the Canucks, I mean, we talked about it a lot yesterday, but what do the Canucks need to clean up heading into tonight with Philly in town?
A little bit similar to what we were just talking about with the breakouts, and Tocchet referenced that he wants that to be a point of emphasis for them to improve on. And one thing that I'm going to be looking at is it's not just on the defenseman. And I had a conversation with Carson Soucy at Morning Skate about this today. The wingers are in an interesting spot where they're trying to balance the desire to get up the ice really quickly to attack off the rush, where it's like, okay, as soon as Vancouver gets the puck back, the wingers want to get up the ice, stretch it vertically so that they can pounce on the counterattack and create offense that way. But the issue that they have to be mindful of is not blowing the zone so that the defenseman, especially in the bottom four, who can't really skate it out and escape forecheck pressure, so that they have actual options, right? Because Soucy referenced this at some point, referenced that at some points in the Calgary game, it worked out really well where the wingers would fly up the ice and their defense would just go hard glassing out or off the boards, and they would catch Calgary because they're an aggressive forecheck team. They would catch those Calgary players caught up the ice, and it would lead to 2-on-1 chances. But he also said there were other examples where the wingers were leaving the zone a little bit early, and they would rim the puck around, and then there's no winger to actually make the play on the half wall to properly break the puck out, and you're stuck defending, right? He also said it's situational. It sort of depends on the team, where some teams that forecheck less aggressively, that's where the Canucks are going to want to have their wingers coming deeper to provide more support, because there's going to be space underneath in the neutral zone if the other team's sitting back a little bit in the neutral zone, as opposed to, there is a temptation if you've got Calgary, for example, sending forecheckers aggressively that just get your wingers flying and try and catch them. So Philly is a fast, aggressive, in-your-face team, similar to Calgary's. They're going to be pressuring the puck a lot. So that's one thing that I'm going to be looking at is, as much as the emphasis is going to be on the bottom four and can they execute better on the breakout, I'm also looking at how are the wingers going to do in striking that balance, because there were moments where, and sometimes it didn't even have anything to do with blowing the zone early. Like I clipped a play in our article today at The Athletic where Daniel Sprong was just coasting back on the back check. It was just caught flat-footed. Forbert rimmed the puck around. Daniel Sprong easily should have been the first one there if he just started moving his feet proactively and read that play. But instead, he didn't see it at all. And Braden Pahal, Flames defender, just jumped down the half wall. And the Flames were able to sustain offense's own pressure. So that's something that I'm going to be looking for as well.
And don't forget, like, the thing I always remember is, do you remember when Jim Rutherford was talking? This is when Bruce was still the coach, when he was talking about what he didn't like about the team. And he said, like, well, I see our defenseman flipping the puck out. It gets knocked down at the line, and then the puck's in the back of our net. That's what they cleaned up so well last year, and they got to clean it up more from what we saw on opening night. Matvei Michkov makes his Rogers Arena debut tonight. And Harm, another thing that I'm keeping in mind ahead of this game is, remember the last time Tocchet really ripped into his team? Like, probably the maddest we've ever seen Rick Tocchet is when the Canucks played that game in Philadelphia. That was last season, right?
Yeah.
Like, start of last season. Yeah. Was that the night he called them soft?
I think it was the "Who Are We to Think?"
Oh, that's right. That's another one. Yeah. There you go. So that's the thing, though. Like, a John Tortorella team in October is a dangerous thing to go up against. Like, those teams are always good in October when John Tortorella is the coach. They're always ready to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where it's not going to be an excuse. I mean, it was never a valid excuse in the first place to get outworked. But that Philly's going to be have their foot on the gas. Tocchet called them one of the hardest working teams in the NHL. Plus, the Canucks just blew a 4-1 lead and lost the game to the Calgary Flames. Like, that's like, you're gonna need your work boots. You're gonna need a proper response. You're gonna need to have all your energy. It's also the Flyer season opener, Michkov's debut. Philadelphia is going to be buzzing, and like you said, John Tortorella teams always come out of the gate flying. So this is going to be a challenging matchup, even though on paper, the talent discrepancy is significant.
Alex Edler has signed a one-day contract. They'll celebrate him ahead of the game tonight. I can't even tell you how many people in the chat right now are asking if Edler could play on the third pairing tonight. It wouldn't be a step down. It wouldn't be a significant step down. Like, Edler still had it in that final year. He still wanted to play. Like, Alex Edler was still looking for a contract. Didn't get one, but doesn't seem like that big of a step down for Alex Edler to suit up.
Well, also Dan Hamhuis was at morning skate.
Makes you think.
I saw him and Edler. I was like, could that be an upgrade on the third pair? Hamhuis Edler pairing.
Oh, jeez. Game 2, folks. Game 2 tonight for the Canucks this season. Let's get to our poll question, which is about Alex Edler, who the Canucks will, of course, celebrate tonight. Let's get to our poll question. Where we asked, on the night of his retirement, where does Alex Edler rank among all-time Canucks defensemen? 1, 2, 3 are outside the top 3. 2 is the number one answer here. 42.9% of voters say that. 26.9% say third. 10.6% say he's number 1. And 19.7% say he's outside the top 3. He's certainly either 2 or 3 for me. Certainly. 2 or 3. And he had a really interesting quote. Like, obviously Hughes is the number 1, but he had a really interesting quote today where he was asked about Hughes breaking his records, and he said, he's like, I have those records because I was here for a long time, and Quinn has those records because of how good he is, which is like a very humble and very true answer. Like, there's a reason Quinn's breaking all these records before he's 25, but that quote really stood out to me.
Yeah, although Edler's longevity is in and of itself a testament to how impressive his career was. His evolution as a player is so fascinating to me, because if you remember earlier in his career, and especially in his prime around the 2011 contention days, he had all the athletic, imposing tools that you look for in a defenseman, as far as the size and the physicality, but also the foot speed, most importantly. Like, he could really skate as well, had offensive chops, and he was more just prone to the big mental mistake, right? That turnover, or just making the type of error that would lead to a goal in the back of the net. And as he lost his foot speed through his late 20s, more notably through his early 30s, and that was around the same time that the Canucks started to really, Jim Benning came in, and those were the dark years. Edler evolved his game to become so much safer as a player, to play within himself and become a really reliable shutdown guy defensively, PK. And yeah, he still had the offensive chops if like on power play too, and when the team would have possession in the offensive zone. But even though he lost that dynamic skating and that dynamic puck moving element to his game, for him to evolve and not immediately fall off a cliff and become a bottom pair defender, but still stick around as like a true top pair defenseman, is extremely impressive. I don't think there are a lot of players who could do that. And I think a lot of that was him picking up that veteran savvy, leaning on that IQ, and just learning how to become a high-end defensive stopper, despite towards the end of his career not having a lot of foot speed at all.
And I mean, those teams were so bad. There's this idea out there that Edler was like a mid defenseman. Like, no, he was in the upper echelon. Like, let's be honest here. He had a great career, and he also played in an era where scoring was down. So I know people look at those records and people look at the numbers he put up. Someone in the chat just said it. There's 8+ seasons of 30+ points for Alex Edler as a defenseman. Again, he was on some bad teams in the back half of his career, and he was still putting up points. Honestly, Harm, like, did you know that Alex Edler had 33 points in 2019-20? That's hard to do. Like, that's really hard to do on the team that he was on that year and the year before that as well. Those years in Vancouver, they were not good. And look, Edler, as much flack as he got, especially toward the end of his career, I don't want this revisionist history where people don't really respect Alex Edler. To me, he is that second or third. If you want to have the conversation, I'll listen to it. To me, he's the second best defenseman this organization's ever had.
I agree. And especially through his prime, he was like the perfect number 2 defender for a Stanley Cup contender. That's what he was. Like, sure, maybe for a season or two, especially like perfectly in his peak, you could make the case that he played at the level of a number 1 defenseman. But really the beauty of that 2011 team was that they had 4 guys who were all top pair caliber. And yeah, they didn't really have that Norris caliber stud, but you can get away with that when you have 4 top pair caliber guys. And that's really how I look at Edler, right? Is sure, he was never really a Norris caliber number 1 defenseman at any point in his career, but for so long, he sustained being a true number 2 defender who could play in all situations, power play, PK, matchup against top lines. And when he had his skating ability, he could help on the breakout. I also love, especially that LA series. I can't even remember what year it is specifically, but man, he was a physical monster with some of the open ice hits he could lay. Just so well-rounded, so productive. And again, his longevity is such a testament to how well he adapted to the game becoming quicker and quicker, and yet he still maintained a high level of ability and performance.
All right, let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by our friends Powered by Square. If you run a restaurant, you're too busy for this ad. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing and new locations opening. You need to get more customers and keep them coming back. So really, you're already thinking about Square, because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400,000 restaurants do all those things and more. So when you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger and think Square. Go to squareup.com/ca/en/campaign/biginrst to see why Square is big in restaurants. All right, Harm. We know the watch party's coming up. Anyone else today, folks? Best contribution. I think we'll do more of these too, but best contribution to anyone else today for those that are watching on the YouTube live show, or if you're on Facebook or on Twitter, you can also participate. Best contribution to anyone else. We'll decide at the end if there is one. If there's not one, we'll push it to the Tuesday show. Tuesday's our next show. We'll push it to the Tuesday show if we have to, but best contribution to anyone else today gets 4 tickets. 1 for you and 3 for your friends to the watch party on October 19th, which, if you haven't heard, is at Greta. Season is here. What better way to kick it off than with your crew at Greta? It's all going down on Saturday, October 19th at our home for the fans, Greta Bar YVR. Doors open at 3 p.m. and you know the drill. Tickets are going fast, so hit up nationgear.ca before they're gone. We're going to have it all. Prizes, trivia, and more to keep the energy buzzing all night long. And we're doing it for a great cause, supporting the BC Mental Health Foundation. Don't miss out on the biggest kickoff party of the year. Be there or hear about it all season long. Visit nationgear.ca to reserve your spot. So like I said, best contribution gets 4 free tickets to the watch party. And man, I was on the watch. We're doing some planning stuff for the watch party today. I was on that planning call today, and it was, we have some fun stuff planned. We have some good stuff. You seriously, folks, I'm not just saying this. You do not want to miss this. Go get your tickets. Nationgear.ca supports a great cause. Come watch the game with us. You're going to be there, right, Harm? Both of us are going to be there. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Get your anyone else's in. Best one today gets 4 tickets. Might have to put it to Tuesday, but we'll see. This one from K-Town Chef. He said, man, I can't wait for some of our D prospects to make this lineup. We can stop having this puck-moving conversation if 2 of Willander, Elias Pettersson, Kirill Kudryavtsev, or Sawyer Minyo make this team full-time. All 4 can skate. Honestly, like I understand what K-Town Chef's saying, but like that's the thing with prospects, and this isn't specific to these guys at all, but like the odds of even 2 of those guys hitting are such, like, it's a long shot for 2 of those guys to become legit like NHL defensemen,
like every day in the lineup,
every
on
day
a contender quality team.
Yes, that's the thing. Like, here's the other thing. Let's circle back on Desharnais for a sec. I think Desharnais is a scratch because he's in Vancouver. He's not a scratch if he's in Edmonton, right?
Yeah,
like, is that fair to say? Like, Vincent Desharnais probably plays over Troy Stecher. I'm not looking at the Desharnais scratch, and I didn't really touch on this when we were talking about it. I'm not really looking at the Desharnais scratch as a, oh my gosh, like what a bad signing. And I'm not trying to say, oh, what a great signing or anything. We talked about, how it was a bit redundant with Myers and all that sort of stuff, but that's not what we're talking about right now. I'm looking at this signing and just saying, and this kind of situation that they're in with him being scratched, and just saying like, okay, this is because they have Juleson, who they're comfortable with, who played a lot of games for them last year, who last year was fighting to get into the lineup, and Talkett often said stuff like, yeah, like everybody's humming right now, but we got to get Juleson in because he's played well too. This should increase that internal competition. I'm not looking at it and saying what a huge disappointment right now that Desharnais is sitting. I'm looking at more as like, okay, like let's see what you can get from Noah Juleson and see if it's a step up on Desharnais. And if it is, like, it's not the end of the world. It's not a bad thing that Desharnais is sitting in the second game of the season. It's not a good thing, but it's also not the end of the world or anything like that.
Yeah, and they were just so disastrous as a pair last night that it, like, you had to try something different, right? Outchanced 6-1, I think, at 5-on-5, outscored 2-0. You can't have, and again, it's only one game, so it's possible that had they had more time together, they would have maybe found a way to be a bit more competent. But also, like, we knew going in that, oh boy, like a Forbort Desharnais pair, I don't know if, and it's not because they're both bad players. Like, they can both be fine number 6 defensemen on almost every team in the NHL. It's just that they're kind of redundant when they're on the same pair together. It's a stylistic mismatch where both of them would flourish better with a more mobile partner that has some puck skills and can handle most of the transportation responsibilities. And so, yeah, I mean, bringing Juleson in, he's quicker and, again, not a natural puck mover, but he'll at least help somewhat when it comes to the foot speed element.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, a couple anyone else here. Travis Wall, will Harm beat quads in basketball this time around? This is the people want to know, Harm. The people really, really want to know if this is going to happen. You said yesterday you were taking me a little too lightly, but now you're going to take me.
No, I'll be honest. You just outplayed me, like, straight up. I will say though, before we rematch the arcade version, you owe me an actual game of 1v1 basketball. Those are my demands.
How are we going to do that before? Where are we going to do this?
Okay, but you owe me a 1v1 game of basketball.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Did you know I have a basketball court in my apartment building?
You took this long to mention this to me?
Yeah, you can come play. That'd be fun. Yeah, that'd be great. We'll do that.
Yeah, I also got a ping pong table. I can't post up in arcade basketball.
You should try. I get a lot of people staring at you. Okay. This one from Nick Lung. Which defenseman would you say is the one that got away from the Canucks because they traded them too quickly? An example I can think of is Gustav Forsling or Kevin Connaughton for those dark days. I'll be
Forsling is
honest.
the first one that came to mind.
Forsling's the first one that comes to mind. Do you know who? I'll just say it. Who I thought was going to be that? Philip Holm. Do you remember Philip Holm?
Yeah, I do. Traded him to
I
Vegas,
was convinced. Right? Yeah. And I was convinced because he was performing well in Utica, and I was convinced. Like I saw a couple games of him, and I was convinced. Like that was my first like real strong take was Philip Holm is going to be an NHL defenseman. The Canucks are letting him rot away in Utica, and they're not calling him up to the big club. What are they doing? 2017-18 with the Comets, he put up 29 points. That was his first season in North America. So I was like, okay, this is going to be it. They signed him in summer of 2017. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a great signing. He was their European signing that year, right? Like he was their Nils Zaman back then. That was their big European free agent signing, and they got him. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. He puts up numbers in Utica, doesn't get the shot at the NHL level, played in one game. He was a -2 that game. It was not a strong performance from Philip Holm, but I wanted to see him get a longer look. And then they traded him. They traded him for Brendan Leipzig. And I was saying immediately that was going to come back to haunt them, that Philip Holm was going to put together a fantastic NHL career. His one NHL game to this point is the one he played with the Canucks. So I was wrong about that one. But I thought Philip Holm was going to be the next Gustav Forsling before Gustav Forsling was even Gustav Forsling.
Well, if we're talking about the right side of the defense, Jalen Chatfield comes to mind. He's developed into a really, really good like number 5 type defenseman who could do a little bit of everything. Has crushed it in Carolina. Canes fans love him. But see, the thing with Chatfield is, I remember the 56 game COVID season. Chatfield wasn't very good in Vancouver. Like they let him walk, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. He's didn't really look like an NHL caliber defenseman. His glow up happened in Carolina, and I think a big part of it was him going from a messy environment in Vancouver, where a lot of fringe defensemen, because the environment is so chaotic and erratic, they're not able to succeed. And then he goes to Carolina, where there's a perfect structure, the perfect coaching, and he had a huge glow up there. So yeah, I mean, would I like to see Jalen Chatfield in this lineup right now? Yeah, but at the same time, it's kind of hindsight to point to him, because when the Canucks walked away from him, let him go in free agency, it's not like anybody in this market was saying, "Oh, can't believe they let Jalen Chatfield walk."
Except for Corey Hergott. Shout out Corey Hergott of Comets.
Really?
Corey.
Shout out Corey.
He was a big fan of Jalen Chatfield, even back to the Utica days. But with Jalen Chatfield, it's interesting you bring him up, because the thing I always think about is just like, what would he have looked like if he got to work with Rick Tocchet? And I think the answer is he'd be pretty damn good, right? Like,
yeah,
out of the system, well, lack of the system that they had under Travis and under Bruce, and just I wonder what he would have looked like. And I think the answer would have been pretty damn good with Carolina. With Rick Tocchet as his coach. What's his he signed a contract this offseason.
Yeah,
right? Didn't they sound like a 3x3?
Yeah, that's the thing too, is I was going to mention, I like Jalen Chatfield a lot more in his last contract. The current one's fine, but it's not cheap. I'm going to pull it up right now.
Yeah, it's a 3x3
cap hit. I don't.
Yeah,
like he'll be worth that because with some of the defensemen that Carolina lost last year, he's going to play more like I imagine more like a number 4-5 than like a number 6 type defenseman. I bet his minutes and matchups go up, but yeah, I mean, he's not a bargain at $3 million by any stretch of the imagination anymore.
All right, I think that was a good anyone else contribution. But Nick just informed us that he can't make it. He said, big fan, love you both. I'd be honored, but I already know I can't make it due to work. So Nick can't make the event, but Nick was going to get tickets. Should we go runner up? Because there's another good contribution in here.
Sure.
All right. This one from K-Town Chef, because K-Town Chef's a regular listener to the show. He said, could there be any interest in Liljegren from the Canucks to create that stylistic match on the third pair with him now on the block, according to Elliot Friedman? Hey, he's a step up on Eric Brandstrom, right? Like, he is a step up on Eric Brandstrom. Could you get Brad for living to give you Liljegren for Desharnais?
Well, they have their
can't
own
answer
tree
that
trunk
confidently.
in Hack and Pay, right?
Yeah,
Hawk and
yeah,
Pay.
yeah.
They loaded up on that style of defenseman already. Plus with Liljegren, he's on a $3 million cap hit. I don't love him for that. He's also, I don't even know if the coaching staff would trust Liljegren in a playoff type environment. That's the other thing with Liljegren is he's been good in the regular season in a sheltered role, but come playoff time, either he's not been trusted by his coaches or he's struggled. And if you're the Canucks and you've got designs um, on a deep playoff run, I don't want to commit $3 million to a right shot defenseman who may not even be part of my top six when the playoffs actually begin, especially because he's got another year left on this deal after this season. So now all of a sudden you'd be talking about, if I've already got money tied up to like beyond the season, for next season, you would have money tied up into Hronek, who you like, Myers, who would ideally be in a bottom pair role, and Liljegren, who isn't a legit top 4 caliber defenseman. That would be too much money between Myers and Liljegren on 2 non-top 4 defensemen for next season. So I say I would pass if I'm the Canucks.
Okay, there's a good. It was a good contribution from K-Town Chef, who now informs me that he is not local, so he can't take the tickets. The tickets are standing till Tuesday, folks. We'll be back on Tuesday, and we'll be giving those tickets away. I don't know how many we're going to be able to give away. I think it might just be those 4, so we'll save it. We'll save it for Tuesday's show. But before we close it out today, let's get to our Bet365 Bet of the Day, which is brought to you by, you guessed it, Bet365 today. Folks, of course, we're taking it. As much as I want to take the Padres, gotta pick the Canucks on a Canucks game day. You can get the Canucks right now to beat the Philadelphia Flyers in game 2 of their season at -200 odds over on Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code VANBONUS when you sign up for an account. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Like I said, folks, we'll be back on Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Hope everybody's a great Thanksgiving weekend. Make sure you tune into Rinkwide. Rinkwide Vancouver will be live after tonight's game. Go find them on the Rinkwide Vancouver YouTube channel. Irfan Ghaffar and Jeff Patterson have you covered for all your post-game needs. But for now, signing off, my name is Dave Quadrelli. That is Harmon Dial. Our technical producer is Jacob Lazar. Thank you so much for listening to the episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.